the FX 8350. What a weird CPU this was back in the early 2010s. I got it actually later. I got it in 2018 just because someone gave me an AM3 Plus motherboard for free. So I thought, might as well get a decent CPU for the platform and try it out for a few years. And that's what I did. I kept it for a few years until I eventually upgraded to Ryzen. Today I paired it with 32 gigabytes of 1600 megahertz DDR3. For some reason, the sticks I have did not like anything above really stock speeds. It just caused crashing and instability. It released in 2012, and it has 8 megabytes of L2 cache and 8 megabytes of L3 cache, so kind of 16 if you want to think of it like that. And I overclocked it to 4.5 gigahertz to get a little more. I've heard that memory overclocking can do a good amount too, but it just wouldn't work for me, and I'm not a great overclocker anyway. In Cinebench, it got a single core score of 105 and a multi-core score of 704. That is substantially faster than the Core 2 Quad we just checked. In single core, that's 40% faster, and in multi-core, that's 151% faster. There was a debate on if this was a true 8-core or more like a 4-core with hyperthreading, because of shared resources amongst CPU components. But if we look here at the scaling number for 6.67x times, I think that does perform closer to a true 8-core, even though the single core is still really bad, and that's why this CPU performed poorly when it came out. It's really the clock speed that tried to keep up, and even then, it's still way worse than the Intel competition. But it's still an upgrade over some older CPUs, that's for sure. The main thing that helped is the multi-core performance, especially in modern games where they can use 8 threads very easily. Let's just go over the games I tested with the Core 2 Quad real quick. And in Battlefront 2, this felt really good. I had a great time playing with this, and even using VRR at a high refresh rate felt great on this system. I could have turned up the settings, but I chose to keep kind of the same settings to keep it more even. With an average of 102 FPS and a 1% low of 20, this is 102% faster than the Core 2 Quad Q 9450 and double the 1% low. I honestly think that's a worst case scenario for the 1% low as well, because there was not that many stutters in my gameplay. I think it got better and better, probably shader compilation stutters. Now, in Jedi Fallen Order, the average was 68 and a 1% low of 28. That's 106% faster than the previous CPU and 180% faster with the 1% low. If you can tell, with the 30 FPS basically 1% low, you're most of the time closer to your 60 FPS target. It's not something I would really worry about. With this adventure game, it felt great. In Need for Speed Heat, the average was really close to 60, 57 and a 1% low of 17. This did feel significantly better than the Core 2 Quad, and I would say this was completely playable. There was a couple stutters here and there. This game always kind of stutters, but as you play, it smooths itself out. But there is a little bit of trouble when you get a lot of racers on the screen at one time. But overall, it felt great. In Hogwarts Legacy, the average was 53 and the 1% low was 16. That's 96% better than the Core 2 Quad. This felt great, and I'm actually extremely surprised because this game is so new. This is from 2023, and it ran so well. Exploring the open world in Hogwarts, in everything, it felt great. If we go to Forza Horizon 4, older but extremely well optimized, you got 93 FPS. I would argue now we're getting into close to high frame rate territory, so don't be afraid to use a monitor that can go up to 144 FPS even with this CPU on, select older games and even some modern games that still run very well. This was 103% better than the Core 2 Quad in averages and way better in terms of stutter and 1% lows. This felt excellent, and I would gladly play like this. In Rise of the Tomb Raider, again, a very old game, but a little more demanding than Forza, 81 FPS and 1% of 44. This felt incredible. This was extremely playable. So if we're talking PS4 level games, this computer can do it very well without an issue. This was a huge upgrade over console, and that's basically what I was coming from. I was coming from console, and this was my first major PC upgrade, and it felt so good with all these games I've been testing. Again, with 103 FPS, 103% better performance. On to some esports that I could get. Unlike the Core 2 Quad that I couldn't even get them to run for whatever reason, Fortnite felt wonderful. With an average of 90 and a 1% low of 52, it felt so good. I don't feel like the computer was holding me back at all. It felt like the game was responsive and it felt good. No major stutters. This game has been more optimized over the years as it keeps getting updated and changing what's happening, but it felt great to play. This one surprised me because Marvel Rivals tends to be extremely demanding, but with an average of 75 and a 1% low of 35, actually I think it's more of a GPU demanding game than a CPU, even with Unreal Engine 5. Unreal Engine 5 tends to be heavier in the GPU. CPU seems okay, especially in this game. It felt pretty good. Now, not as good as Fortnite, and this game's also more chaotic and more or less optimized than Fortnite is, but this was totally fine. You use a decent GPU with it, it felt great. We go to Red Dead Redemption 2. This one's pretty old now, but with an average of 62 FPS and a 1% low of 25, there is a little bit of stutters, but this one felt pretty good as well. It benchmarked well. I played it for a while. It felt fine. There was no major issues. There was some drops here and there, of course. But again, this one felt totally playable and right above 60 FPS. I had no major complaints here. Let's end off here. With Battlefield 6, I'm playing RedSec here because it's the free version and these are the smaller maps, and I think there's more entertainment value in this. But of course, there's the Battle Royale mode as well. But this should be fairly close to the way the normal paid version of the game plays too, because it has a similar map structure. The average is 43 FPS and a 1% low of 18. This one, I would say, personal experience, felt really bad. Just bad frame times. You don't really want to play a first-person shooter below 40 FPS. It just felt very stuttery. It didn't feel like anytime you needed to have quick response time, that's when it would stutter. So unfortunately, I don't think this CPU can keep up with the 2025 fun multiplayer games that are demanding. Now, with indies, with more esports friendly games, yeah, I showed you Marvel Rivals and Fortnite actually worked great. But Battlefield 6 is off the table for this one, even though it technically turns on and runs. So overall, what do I think? I was incredibly surprised. I do not remember this playing this well and this fine on most games. I don't know what I was doing, because a lot of these games are actually games I played on it back before 2020. And I didn't have a great experience with this CPU when I first used it, and I am really surprised how well it is. I would say this CPU is okay for that transitionary period between the PS4 and the PS5. Most games of that era will run great. Anything before 2020, pretty good. Anything past 2020, you're kind of more up in the air. But it seems like some games run fine, like Hogwarts Legacy and even Marvel Rivals and Fortnite. Now, your bigger open worlds like Cyberpunk, Battlefield's not doing very good. It's not a thing I would expect to be getting a high-end gaming experience with, and honestly probably most of the time you're going to have a better experience with the PS5. But for how old this CPU is and for how negatively it was received at the time, this surprised me very much because it got close to 60 FPS almost all the time, if not much more. In fact, if we do the 10 game average over the games I tested, I got an average of 72 and a 1% low of 32. That's nothing to me to complain about. And if you still have one of these, let me know and tell me how it's going. If you just don't buy the newest games, you wait for sales and you take your time with your backlog, this is totally still usable. But I think it is time to move on. But I would not be complaining about this gaming experience if I was just staying with games before 2023. It felt great, and I was extremely surprised.